Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Why Justin Herbert is the QB you want in fantasy football this year, and Christian Watson is someone to avoid. Plus, Aaron Rodgers will lead the Jets to a division title this year. I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
Training camp hype trains, preseason game hype trains. It's almost time for your fantasy football drafts. So you need to know which hype trains you need to be on. So our new host of Locked On Fantasy Football, Michelle Majuk, is here to talk about the players you should be grabbing, the players you should be fading, everything to get you ready for your draft. Michelle, let's start with some of the players that you think are really good values right now as we head into draft season, baby.
Yeah, my first one, I'll start with a quarterback. It's Justin Herbert, right? So there's the top three quarterbacks. There's Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, and Josh Allen. But I think Justin Herbert is going to perform just like those guys this year, except you can get him 3 rounds later in your drafts. So I know a lot of people have that stink on them from how much Herbert hurt them last season in fantasy. Listen, I'm one of them, right? And I said, I'm swearing off Herbert. He's not going to be on my team. And then I got over it during the offseason. His touchdown percentage was so low last year. It went down from 5.7 in his first 2 seasons all the way down to 3.6. That's not going to keep up. Austin Eckler has just been stealing all the touchdowns. And it would be incredible for him to go on another run of scoring 15 plus touchdowns next season. I also think Kellen Moore being there as a new OC is going to open up everything. The air yards are going to be better. He's going to have his healthy weapons with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. I've been predicting Justin Herbert 50 passing touchdowns this year, which would be pretty insane because not many quarterbacks have done it. Do you have an instant reaction on that one?
I love it. The thing about Justin Herbert is I don't think you're going to be mad cheering for that guy every week. And that's the thing. And I luckily had him 2 years ago when he was like making that ascension and not last year when he was disappointing. So I feel good about that. What is your position on drafting quarterbacks though? Because right now, you know, I think there are actually competing schools of thought now on when you should be taking quarterbacks. It used to be fade them, wait until the later rounds. And now you're hearing people go, actually, if you can get one of those top, and the number changes every year, right? 3, 4, 5 guys, you can do it early. Where are you on that?
Yeah, so I don't want to take one of the top 3 guys because I'm not spending a 2nd or 3rd round pick on a quarterback. But when you get into those 5th, 6th, 7th rounds, that's where I really like to play the board, right? So if I'm sitting in that position, I'm not in love with any of the running backs or wide receivers there. I think that's a perfect time to take your Justin Fields or take your Justin Herbert. If there is a guy I absolutely love, then I'll pass on them and maybe wait till the next tier. Dak Prescott is a guy I really like as well. So maybe when I hit the 7th, 8th round, that's when I run into that situation where I don't really love anyone on the board. That's kind of how I like to play it there with the quarterbacks.
Where are you finding value this year at the skill positions?
So there's actually a lot of good value at running backs this year, which is not usual, right?
No.
They normally go so early, but there's 2 guys I really want to point out here. One is Khalil Herbert. He's going in the 9th round, which maybe after the preseason opener when he ripped off a 56-yard receiving touchdown, maybe that price will drive up a bit, but it could drive up quite a lot and I would still like him. I think the biggest issue with him this entire offseason has just been, is he the Bears starter? Because we know that the Bears are one of the best rushing offenses in the league, and they're still going to be with Justin Fields there. And we know that Khalil Herbert has been nothing but fantastic anytime he's on the field. He's one of just 6 running backs to average over 5 yards per carry since entering the league in 2021. And he's averaged 18.4 fantasy points per game anytime he's had 12 plus carries. So when he's on the field, he's really good. And the whole question was, is he going to be the starter? I think that was answered in the first preseason game. He played every snap the starters played, and then he came out with the starters, which is great to see. So I'm drafting him in every single league. And then Alexander Madison, I've been pounding the tables for this man. He's the Vikings running back, taking over Dalvin Cook's job now that he's gone. I thought his draft price was going to rise incredibly fast when Cook was gone. It's still sitting there in the 6th round, and I can't understand it. So he hasn't had many chances to be the starter, but over his last 5 starts when Dalvin Cook missed, he has averaged 130 scrimmage yards per game and over 23 fantasy points per game. And the competition behind him is nothing to be scared of. It's Ty Chandler, who looked good in the preseason, but he's a second-year player that was a 5th-round draft pick, had 6 carries last year. Dwayne McBride, 7th-round pick. There's no competition. Maybe if they bring in Kareem Hunt, I'll be a little bit worried. I know he visited them, but for now, he's a screaming value there at the running back position.
Stay up to date all year on all things fantasy football by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Fantasy Football on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Sports Today your first listen. Coming up, you should be avoiding this year 2 receiver in your fantasy draft. Before we get to that, the Ravens are losing a key defensive back to injury. Football season is about to kick off, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long, because right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you can get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. Just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you'll get bonus bets for every victory. You can use your bonus bets on point spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. You can sign up, place a bet on the Eagles to win it all, and get paid for every win they accumulate in the regular season before the Super Bowl even happens. You can also jump in on some NFL division futures. The AFC West has the biggest gap in odds, as the Chiefs are favored to win the division for the millionth straight year. No, it's the 8th straight year. FanDuel has the Kansas City Chiefs at minus 180 to win it, while the Los Angeles Chargers come in with the second highest odds at 3-1. You can also combine prop bets within a game to make a bigger payout with a same game parlay. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Baltimore Ravens star cornerback Marlon Humphrey will have surgery on his foot, further depleting a position group that has been decimated during training camp. Head coach John Harbaugh does not believe Humphrey will miss significant time, but Harbaugh has seen most of his corners dealing with some kind of injury through camp. Notably, Rock Ya-Sin, Baltimore's other starting corner, has been sidelined since August 3rd with a knee injury. Baltimore's top corners on the field Wednesday were Brandon Stevens, who had been playing safety at the start of training camp, and Kevon Seymour, who is on his 4th team in his 6-year career. Though the Ravens will face rookie quarterback in week 1 and week 3, they face Joe Burrow in week 2. You need your corners for that guy. Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receiver Russell Gage will miss the 2023 NFL season. He was carted off the practice field with a serious knee injury on Wednesday. Gage's injury was non-contact, sustained while he was backpedaling during 7-on-7 drills. He was emotional and in tears as he was leaving the field, with teammates taking a knee around him. Unfortunately, injuries have plagued Gage's time with the Buccaneers. He was dealing with a hamstring strain all spring and early in training camp, but had been full practice for over a week. The 27-year-old took a pay cut this offseason to remain with the team. In baseball, the Cincinnati Reds look to get even with their in-state rival Cleveland Guardians.
TJ Friedl. What's up? This is Jeff Carr from the Locked On Reds podcast. And TJ Friedl has the catch of the year that then catapults the Reds into a big win over the Cleveland Guardians. Yes, the Reds did have 2 home runs in the 4th inning, 2 two-run home runs that really blew the doors off this game. They were able to play a little bit of add-on in this. The offense that was non-existent in the first game showed up in a big way in game 2. Andrew Abbott, not his best stuff, but he was just good enough. And the bullpen pitched pretty well. Overall, though, it was TJ Friedl. This dude absolutely should never come off the field. He should never. There's no platoon splits I want to hear about. There's nothing that should keep TJ Friedl off of the field for the Cincinnati Reds. We've got a lot to talk about, including a really weird rule that went in the favor of the Reds early on in the game. Make sure you join us on the next Locked On Reds.
And the Angels looked for any signs of life against the Rangers.
So the Angels have been terrible since the trade deadline. They haven't hit, they haven't pitched, they've just looked awful. So doesn't it make sense that on Wednesday night they would almost no-hit the Texas Rangers? Hey, everybody, it's Mike Frisch, one half of Locked On Angels. Angels win 2-0 on Wednesday night, and Reed Detmers took a no-hitter into the 8th inning. The same Reed Detmers that has a 10.30 ERA in his last 6 starts. The same Reed Detmers that only went about 2 innings in his last start. This guy went out there and he shoved. He pitched well, and it was so good to see. And the Angels backed him up with 2 home runs, one from Matt Thaiss in the 9th inning, which was an add-on run, to Shohei Ohtani's home run in the 1st inning, his 42nd of the year. This game was incredible, and there was one thing that it proves about the Angels, and John and I are going to talk about it on Locked On Angels. Come and join us.
Let's turn the tables a little bit, because there's always going to be guys where you're going, someone explain this to me. I do not get the hype around this player. So who is the top of your, why exactly am I supposed to love this guy this year?
Yeah, my top one has to be Christian Watson, and I'm really sorry. I know you're a Packers fan, and I know you're not going to like this at all. This is
a personal attack.
If he was going later in the drafts, I would be down. But there was just that little period of time where he was good for fantasy. And the rest of the time, he did absolutely nothing. Majority of games, he had under 5 PPR points. And I'm not saying he can't break out this year, right? But there's a lot of second-year guys that can break out. There's George Pickens. There's Jahan Dotson. There's... well, now it was Treylon Burks, so now he just hurt his LCL. So we'll see what happens there. But there's other guys you can pick later in the draft that have the same opportunity to break out as Christian Watson. And we don't know right now if Christian Watson is the top target in this offense. They have so many young guys that it could be Romeo Doubs.
Their guy might be Romeo Doubs. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's the one I would prefer to take because he's going so much later. And I think they have the same exact chance to break out. So that's one guy I'm staying off of this year. Do you want to try to talk me into Christian Watson?
Look, I think that if you take him, you will not regret it, because I do think he will make one or two. He'll have 1 or 2 games in the first 6 weeks where you'll go, I just won my week, because he had 8 catches for 180 yards and 2 touchdowns. There are going to be some games where he does that, but I understand there is a lot of volatility there. And that's not going to be for everybody. There are plenty of questions there. I'm not going to try and talk you out of it. What about at the running back position? You said there was a lot of depth. There's someone you're going, I do not want this guy on my team.
Okay, so hear me out, because people got mad at me. I just posted an article on NFL.com saying I think Austin Eckler is one of the riskiest picks this year. And it's because he's a top 5 pick. And it goes with my Justin Herbert take, right? Yeah. I think Justin Herbert's going to be great for fantasy. I think that means Austin Eckler comes down a little bit. And there's 2 reasons for that, right? It's touchdown regression and it's target regression. He had 127 targets last year. So much of that, I think, came down to Herbert's ribs being injured. So he wanted to get the ball out quickly, and he was not going to risk getting hit. So it was just like, I'm going to just check this down. And then also Mike Williams and Keenan Allen were dealing with nagging injuries pretty much the whole year. Now, I know you could say, well, he had 94 targets the year before that. He's still going to get a good amount of targets, but 127 is not in the books. And then also, if you bring down the touchdowns with that, so he's scored over 18 touchdowns over the last 2 years. Only 2 running backs in NFL history have scored 16 plus touchdowns in 3 straight seasons. I don't expect Austin Eckler to be the 3rd running back to do that. So I do think a good amount of touchdown with the touchdown luck he's getting, that's going to go over the Herbert. So if his targets come down and his touchdowns come down, his top 5 overall draft pick is just too high for me. Great talent. He'll be a good fantasy asset, just not top 5 in my mind.
Okay, let's end this on a positive note, because I've been having a lot of fun talking about this with you. Someone where every time you walk into a draft, because you probably do 10, what is the player where you're going, I need to leave this draft with this player?
It's getting harder and harder, because I think the buzz is hyping him up, and I did not want him to score a touchdown in this last preseason because I don't want his price to go up any further. It's Jahan Dotson, the Commanders' 2nd-year wide receiver. I brought him up as a guy I would much rather take a risk on than Christian Watson, and he's going a good 3 rounds after him. So Dotson unfortunately dealt with a hamstring injury for the lot of last year, which kind of ruined his, whole rookie season. He played just 12 games, but a lot of those he came back, it was starting slow. He still scored 16 plus fantasy points in 5 games last season. That was tied for the second most such games among all rookies, all positions, which is very, very sad for Kenny Pickett, my boy. I'm a Steelers fan. It's very sad that Jahan Dotson had more such those games than Kenny Pickett, but it was behind only offensive rookie of the year, Garrett Wilson, who had 6 such games. He played 17 games. So again, Dotson at 5, only 1 game behind him. And I'm a huge Sam Howell believer. I don't understand why he fell in the NFL draft that far. I think he has a great arm. I think he has mobility to escape the pressure. And clearly he really likes Dotson, right? We saw it just in his 1 start last year. He had 3 receptions of 20 plus yards with Dotson in his 1 start last season. And then in the preseason game, he hits him for a 26-yard receiving touchdown. I do not want to leave my drafts without him this year.
Stay up to date all year on all things fantasy football by subscribing to Locked On Sports today and Locked On Fantasy Football on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, why Aaron Rodgers will lead the Jets to a division title this year. Aaron Rodgers has dominated the NFL offseason with his move to New York. Locked On NFL hosts Tony Wiggins and James Rapine see similarities to when Tom Brady went to Tampa Bay and believe the Jets will enjoy similar success.
Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets will win the AFC East. There you go. And so we break it now because that's not who won it last year, right? So this is the first team that we're going to choose. I think they're going to do it, man. There's something about, I always kind of watch out for the all-star team approach because, they just signed Dalvin Cook also. But the thing about it is these guys have really, really embraced Aaron, which says a lot about how they felt about their quarterback last year, who by the way, he played really well in the first preseason game, Zach Wilson. But I do believe this is about a rejuvenated Aaron Rodgers, guys that have bought in. He came in. It almost feels like the Brady situation down in Tampa where everybody's all in with it. They've ingratiated him into the team. He's accepted it. He looks like he's having a good time. I actually think the Jets are going to make a lot of noise this year.
Whew. See, here's the problem. When I set you up and say, Tony, you go ahead, is you read my notes. You clearly read my notes. You must have flown up to Cincinnati from Jacksonville.
Yeah, of course.
Came into my office, stole my notes, and none of the cameras picked you up. None of the security system. Man, you're just elusive, Tony Wiggins. He's slippery. Because I look at this Jets team. They added Dalvin Cook. I like Garrett Wilson a lot. I look at the Buffalo Bills, and yes, you could sell me on Dalton Kincaid. I think Stephon Diggs unhappy. Josh Allen, could they take a step back? Yeah, maybe, and here's why. Because Aaron Rodgers is clearly motivated to do what Brady did in Tampa Bay with the Jets.
Here's the difference. Tom Brady played in a weak division in an NFC that really only had the Packers to contend with. Coincidentally, Aaron Rodgers. Tom Brady went into Lambeau Field and beat Aaron Rodgers at Lambeau Field and then beat Patrick Mahomes to win the Super Bowl. This AFC is not that, where the Jets are probably the 3rd most talented team in their own division. Never mind being behind teams like the Chiefs, the Bengals. You could make the case the Chargers, the Browns even. If Deshaun Watson returns to his old form at the quarterback position, that's a really, really good roster. And guess what? The one thing that could sink this team is the one huge weakness that it has, the offensive line. Tom Brady and the Buccaneers drafted Tristan Wirfs and solidified that offensive line. He became an all-pro as a rookie. And if they don't do that, they don't win the Super Bowl. Right now, Aaron Rodgers is running for his life in joint practices against, coincidentally, the Buccaneers. And the offensive line has been such a problem. Robert Saleh did a monologue about it on Hard Knocks the other day. This team has some talent. And it is in a lot of ways similar to that 2020 team that Tom Brady and the Buccaneers beat. That elite receiver, some nice complementary pieces, deep backfield. The defense is theoretically better, but they were also one of the healthiest defenses in the league last year. That's really important. But that Packers team had a really good offensive line. Until they didn't, until David Bakhtiari tore his ACL. And that ultimately cost the Packers 2 real chances at Super Bowls in 20 and 21. When the offensive line play hasn't been good over the last few years with Aaron Rodgers, his play has suffered greatly. And if they can't protect Rodgers, and right now it does not look like they're going to be able to do it against the best defenses in the league, they have no chance. And finally, Venus Williams will be playing in her 24th U.S. Open when the tournament gets underway later this month after receiving a wild card from the United States Tennis Association on Wednesday. The 43-year-old Williams returned to competition earlier this summer after being sidelined for 6 months with injuries. She recorded her first top 20 win in 4 years on Monday. The former number one made her debut in New York in 1997 and reached the final. She has won singles titles twice in 2000 and 2001 and has reached the quarterfinals or better on 12 occasions, most recently with a semifinal appearance in 2017. Not that long ago. Thanks for making Locked On Sports today your first listen. Now go find your favorite team's Locked On podcast and make them your second listen. Coming up tomorrow, are we sleeping on the Buffalo Bills? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
For more episodes of Locked On Sports Today, go to our video on demand. Click on Sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.